The walls fell in under 15 minutes. The so-called safe zone of Jericho Ridge, once a beacon of hope in the ruined landscape of dead America, was overrun before the sun had even set. It started with a low tremor, like distant thunder, but it wasn't the weather, it was footsteps. Hundreds of them. Then came the screams. Miles Keller, a former Army Ranger turned reluctant survivor, bolted down a hallway inside the repurposed hospital turned command post. The air reeked of smoke and decay. Overhead, emergency lights flickered as he yelled into a broken walkie-talkie. "Command, this is Keller. The wall's been breached on the east side, we need evac, now." Static answered. He kicked open a door to the weapons locker, grabbed what was left, an old shotgun, 3 shells, and a bloodied combat knife. It wasn't enough. Nothing was anymore. Outside, the chaos was unreal. Fires lit the sky, silhouetting the shambling forms of the undead as they poured through the breach. But these weren't the mindless zombies he'd fought for years. These moved faster. Smarter. One of them even ducked as a bullet flew past its head. That wasn't possible until now. Miles sprinted through the alley, ducking beneath fallen power lines and dragging a wounded teenager, Rico, behind him. The kid's leg was torn open, but he still clung to his dad's revolver like it was his soul. "Don't stop!" Miles barked. "We're almost out." A scream ripped through the night. Rico turned. His sister, barely 11, was being dragged by 2 zombies into the back of a shattered bus. "No!" the boy cried, wrenching himself free. He fired, missed. Before Miles could grab him, the boy rushed toward her. The scream cut short. Miles didn't look back. He couldn't. He dove through a broken drainage gate behind the elementary school and sealed it with a rusted pipe. He fell against the wall, panting. Alone now. Rico was gone. The zone was lost. Miles wandered for hours in the dark, past charred homes and overturned cars, until he saw it, a collapsed library swallowed by vines and silence. As he stepped inside, something clicked beneath his boot. A trap? A floodlight burst to life. Guns cocked in the shadows. "Who are you?" a woman demanded. "Answer or we shoot." Miles raised his hands slowly. "Name's Miles Keller. Former 2nd Ranger Battalion. I was in Jericho Ridge when it fell. I'm not infected." The light revealed 6 survivors, faces gaunt, eyes wild. At their center stood the woman, a middle-aged fighter with a scarred cheek and sharp eyes. "Name's Emery. Welcome to the Resistance." Miles blinked. "Resistance? I thought Jericho Ridge was the last stand." "Not anymore," Emery replied, leading him down into the basement through a hidden hatch. "They thought we were dead. We let them. That's how we stayed alive." As Miles stepped into the candlelit chamber, he saw maps pinned to the walls, radios half disassembled, and children being taught to shoot BB guns in silence. The smell of soup mixed with gun oil and desperation. Emery handed him a bowl. "Eat. Then tell us what you saw out there." Miles did. He told them everything, about the armored undead, the failed defenses, Rico, the new tactics the zombies used. Every word hung heavy in the room like smoke. "They're changing," Emery whispered. "We knew it was coming. We just didn't think it would be now." Miles stared at her. "You knew?" She pointed to a wall of notes. "We've seen patterns. Coordinated attacks. Zombies avoiding traps. They're learning, or being taught." A chill ran through Miles' spine. "What do we do?" he asked. She looked him straight in the eye. "We fight smarter. From the shadows. And when the time's right, we strike." The flame from the candle danced between them. And somewhere, outside in the dark, the undead howled into the night. The night was quiet inside the underground shelter, but Miles couldn't sleep. He sat against a cinder-block wall, legs stretched out, staring at the flickering flame of a lantern. His fingers absently traced the worn edge of his dog tag, a token of the life before everything had gone to hell. Above, faint creaks echoed through the collapsed library, reminders that the world up top was still crawling with death. Emery approached, carrying 2 mugs of something warm and slightly bitter. "You look like a man who could use this." Miles took the drink with a nod. "Thanks." He didn't ask what it was. She sat beside him in silence for a moment. Then she said, "You've got that look. The kind soldiers wear when they think they've seen too much." He let out a quiet breath. "I was a squad leader. 8 of us survived the first 2 months of the outbreak. We held a fuel depot near Flagstaff. Ran missions, kept civilians safe, until one of our own got bit and lied about it." Emery said nothing, just waited. "We didn't know until he turned in the middle of the night. We lost everyone but me. Since then, I've been drifting from zone to zone, doing what I can. Jericho Ridge was supposed to be my last stop. Guess I was wrong." Emery looked at him. "We all carry ghosts." From the corner of the shelter, a low voice called out, "Emery, you better come see this." They stood quickly, mugs forgotten, and followed the voice to the map table. A younger woman named Kira pointed to a scribbled sheet of paper, intel from their last scavenging run. "These were patrol points marked just 2 weeks ago," Kira explained. "They're all cold now. No radio, no movement. In this one, Outpost Redbird, it left a distress signal yesterday. It stopped transmitting 6 hours ago." Miles leaned in. "You think it's the same pattern? The smarter infected?" Emery's jaw clenched. "That's my bet." The room fell silent. Miles straightened. "Then we can't stay here. They're closing in. We need to train your people, arm them, get ready for a real fight." Emery hesitated, glancing toward the children sleeping near the back of the shelter. "Most of these folks have never fired a real gun, let alone fought the things up close." "Then we change that," Miles said firmly. "Because hiding's not going to save them." By dawn, the smell of gunpowder filled the air. Miles stood in the small gravel courtyard behind the ruined library, facing 10 of the Resistance's fighters. Some were barely old enough to drive. Others looked like they belonged in retirement homes. But all of them had the same look, raw determination burning behind tired eyes. He barked orders as they took turns firing at makeshift dummies built from straw, tires, and scavenged clothes. Their aim was shaky. Their stances were worse. But they learned quickly. "Don't shoot until you're sure," he warned. "1 bullet's all it takes to save your life, or waste your last chance." Emery watched from a distance, arms crossed. "You were born for this." "I was made for it," Miles replied without turning. "There's a difference." By midday, they practiced combat drills inside the shelter. How to move silently. How to strike without hesitation. How to stab, reload, retreat. Miles taught them how to think like hunters instead of prey. Then, just as they were wrapping up, the air shifted. Kira burst into the room. Perimeter sensors just went off. "East side. Something's out there." Everyone froze. Miles grabbed a shotgun and motioned toward the access tunnel. "No one opens the front entrance. We go topside through the collapse. Quiet. Controlled." The team moved like shadows through the dark. Up top, the burned remains of the library loomed over the street like a skeleton. Miles led the way to the edge of the rubble and peeked through a narrow gap. 3 figures stood at the far end of the street. At first glance, they looked human, tattered clothes, weapons strapped to their backs, faces hidden behind dust-covered scarves. But then, one of them lifted its head. Its eyes were pale. Glossy. "Wrong." Emery crouched beside Miles. "Are they?" "Scouts," he whispered. "Zombies. But they're carrying weapons they don't use. Camouflaged. They want us to think they're survivors." Kira hissed, "Why would they?" "To get close," Miles growled. "They're testing us. Watching who reacts, who panics." One of the scouts turned its head directly toward them. Miles didn't wait. "Back underground." Now. They withdrew in silence, sealing the tunnel behind them. In the shelter, Emery paced. This changes everything. They're adapting again. Blending in. They're not just evolving, Miles said grimly. They're planning. A silence spread like a disease. And then Miles made the call. We strike first. Tomorrow. The morning sky burned red as if warning of the blood to come. Miles stood at the front of the resistance, his rifle slung tight, eyes scanning the overgrown streets. The plan was simple: move before the enemy could tighten their grip. Hit the scouts first. Make them bleed. Or whatever was left inside them. Jericho Ridge was quiet, too quiet. The wind rattled broken windows, and vines swayed like fingers across rusting cars. The unnatural silence was louder than any scream. Positions, Miles ordered. 2 flanks, 1 forward assault. No mistakes. Kira, crouched beside an overturned truck, checked her gear and whispered, "Feels like a trap." "It probably is," Emery replied from behind cover, her eyes steady but stormy. "But it's our trap now." The team fanned out across the street, ghosts in the mist. Every boot step was measured. Every breath shallow. The library was now behind them, left guarded by only 2 volunteers, in case the dead circled back. At the far end of Main Street, near the hollowed-out diner, movement stirred. 3 figures emerged from the alley. They wore scavenger armor, pieced together from old sports gear and Kevlar. Their gait was unnatural, just human enough to fool the eye. But the way they turned their heads in perfect unison, like machines, or predators, was wrong. Inhuman. Miles raised his hand. "On my mark." The figures paused, sniffing the air. One stepped forward, cocked its head. Then it smiled. The twisted grin was all wrong, too wide, too calm. And then it hissed, a low guttural sound that scraped across the nerves like barbed wire. "Now." Gunfire shattered the silence. Bullets tore through the morning haze, striking 2 of the scouts. They stumbled, jerked, then began running. Not away. Toward them. "Flank left." Miles shouted. Kira fired a short burst, dropping 1. But the remaining 2 were fast, unnaturally so. One leapt onto a car hood, then dove across the distance like a feral beast. Miles met it midair, slamming the butt of his rifle into its face. They crashed to the ground. The thing thrashed beneath him, snapping, snarling, blood spilling from its nose yet grinning as it clawed at his chest. He jammed his knife into its temple. Once. Twice. Only on the 3rd strike did it stop moving. Breathing hard, he rolled off. The 3rd scout was gone. Emery jogged up. "You good?" "Yeah." "Where's the last one?" "Vanished," she said, eyes scanning the rooftops. "Ran like it had a purpose." Miles scowled. Then this was just a test. Again. They regrouped near the diner, bodies smoking from close-range blasts. Kira towed one of the corpses. "They're tougher than the usual roamers. Smarter, faster." "They're not scouts anymore," Miles said. "They're assassins." He looked back at the bodies. One had a radio clutched in its dead hand. The screen blinked with coordinates. Frequencies. Codes. Miles ripped it free and scanned the display. "This isn't theirs," he said. "It's ours. They've been listening." Emery stepped closer. "Then they know everything. And they'll be coming." Back in the shelter, the air was thick with unease. Miles slammed the radio onto the table. "They've cracked our comms. That's how they knew about Redbird. How they're predicting our patrols. They're feeding off our intel." "How the hell are they using radios?" Kira asked. "They're dead." "Something's guiding them," Miles answered. "Maybe not dead in the way we think. Maybe infected. Controlled. Doesn't matter. We can't rely on old plans anymore." Emery turned to the others. "Double the guards. We cut all open transmissions. We moved to coded bursts only. The room broke into hurried motion, runners carrying orders, techs switching channels. The resistance was awakening from a long slumber of fear. That night, the first wave hit. It began with a shriek from the eastern lookout post. Miles raced to the ladder, climbing through the rubble toward the surface. The moment he emerged, the library shook with gunfire. Through the broken walls, shadows darted, half-human shapes with glowing eyes and razor-edged limbs. Some still wore the rags of their old lives. A woman in a bloodied nurse's uniform. A teenager in a football jersey. All twisted, all wrong. Hold the line. Emery screamed from the barricades. Kira and 2 others laid down suppressing fire, the muzzle flashes painting the dark in violent bursts. Miles dropped 2 targets before reaching the front barricade. We need more ammo. Already gone through half, someone shouted back. One of the infected slammed into the plywood barricade, cracking it down the middle. Another leapt clear over and landed among the defenders. Miles tackled at mid-lunge, slamming both of them into a shelf of crumbling books. The infected thrashed with manic energy, eyes burning. Then, it spoke. Resistance, it hissed. We learn. Miles froze. For a moment, the world seemed to still. Then he pulled the trigger, blowing its head apart. Behind him, Emery's voice rang out. Fall back to level 2. Seal the main corridor. The resistance scattered into defensive retreat. As the infected flooded in, Miles looked to the sky through a broken ceiling. Red again. Blood red. The siege had begun. The walls of the underground shelter trembled with every explosion above. Miles slammed the reinforced hatch behind the last retreating defender, bolting it shut as dust rained down from the stone ceiling. The sounds of battle echoed through the ventilation shafts, screams, gunfire, the feral shrieks of the evolved infected. They were no longer just a resistance. They were survivors at the edge of extinction. Emery leaned against the far wall, blood streaking her arm from a fresh gash. We lost the upper level. How many? Miles asked, breathing hard. 5. 2 pulled down in the dark. 3 never made it to the fallback point. Miles clenched his fists. We hold here. No matter what. This shelter was built to withstand a war, and that's exactly what we're in. Kira stepped forward, eyes red-rimmed, her voice shaking. We can't just wait them out. They're thinking now. They'll find a way in. Let them try, Emery said. We have fuel lines rigged to collapse tunnels. Choke points we control. They want a war? Let's give them one. Miles looked to the rest of the team, fighters exhausted, wounded, but not broken. This is our stand. No more running. They began reinforcing the inner corridors. Old shelving units were bolted into makeshift barricades. Fuel canisters were wired with detonators. Every hallway became a trap waiting to be sprung. Miles checked each station personally, his voice calm but firm. You shoot only when you see eyes. They won't stop unless you make them. Children were moved deeper underground, into the vault, the most secure chamber, shielded by iron doors once meant for rare books. Now, they held what was left of humanity's future. As night deepened, so did the quiet. Too quiet. Emery stood at the main tunnel entrance, shotgun in hand. They're regrouping. Learning from the last attack, Miles said. They know what they lost. And what we're willing to do to stop them. A sudden clang echoed from the far corridor. Everyone turned. The security camera blinked to life. A dark figure moved just outside the blast zone of the first choke point, just standing there. Watching. It was tall, humanoid, with strange tubing running across its back like a breathing apparatus. Half its face was gone, but the other half smirked. Then, it lifted a hand. A single sharp tap echoed through the feed. 3 knocks. A signal. And then the screen went black. Miles turned to the group. They're not just attacking us. Kira's voice cracked. What does it mean? It means this is psychological now, Emery answered. They're taunting us. The lights flickered. Then died. Total darkness swallowed the corridor. Generators kicked in moments later, flooding the area with emergency red lighting. Shadows stretched long and thin. That's when the first alarm went off. Breach in Corridor 4. Move! Miles shouted. He and 3 others sprinted toward the breach point, rifles raised. As they rounded the corner, a sickening sound filled the air, like tearing metal and snarling breath. 2 infected were already inside, crawling low and fast along the walls like insects. Their eyes glowed red in the emergency light. Gunfire erupted. One of the defenders was pulled off his feet, screaming as he was dragged back into the dark. Miles fired again, aiming high. 1 infected dropped. The other leapt at him, arms outstretched. Emery tackled at midair, both of them slamming against the wall. She jammed a blade into its throat and twisted hard. It gurgled once. Then fell limp. They were breathing hard when silence returned. Kira arrived moments later, eyes wide. There are more. They're probing every tunnel. Looking for cracks. Then we give them a message, Miles said. He grabbed the detonator for Corridor 7 and flipped the switch. A deep rumble shook the foundation. The earth above them collapsed, sealing the tunnel with fire and smoke. That'll keep them guessing. Hours passed. No more breaches. The resistance regrouped, patching wounds, counting ammo, rechecking every trap. In the far corner of the shelter, Emery finally let her guard down. She sat beside Miles, exhausted but alive. You think they'll try again tonight? She asked. They're smart, he said. But they're not patient. Not like us. You really believe that? He looked toward the iron door protecting the vault. I believe that what we're fighting for is stronger than what's chasing us. Emery nodded slowly. We made it through tonight. Miles leaned his head back against the wall. Then we make it through tomorrow. From deep within the shadows, a low growl echoed. The siege wasn't over. It had only just begun. The shelter smelled like burnt dust and sweat. Tension clung to every wall like a second skin. The silence wasn't peace, it was anticipation. The kind that came before a breaking point. Miles stared at the crude map sprawled across the planning table. Red markers for breached corridors. Yellow for traps already sprung. The blue lines, escape tunnels, had all but vanished. They were boxed in, one layer at a time. Emery approached with a battered tablet. Recon drone finally made it back. We've got footage. He leaned over, watching the grainy video feed. Aerial footage of the town, darkened streets crawling with motion. But it wasn't chaos. The infected moved in patrols. In lines. Herds being guided. Then the camera froze on one figure at the center of it all. Tall. Cloaked. Surrounded by other infected kneeling like soldiers. Kira appeared behind them. We've seen that one before. The one from the corridor breach. The one that knocked 3 times, Miles added. Emery narrowed her eyes. It's leading them. Not a mindless monster, Miles muttered. Something more. They rewound the footage again and again. Patterns emerged, strategic positioning, coordinated attacks, and deliberate avoidance of heavy fortifications. This wasn't an infection. It was a campaign. Miles straightened. We need to change tactics. If we wait here, we die. We need to hit them where it hurts. Emery folded her arms. You want to go after that thing? We don't have a choice anymore. We kill the head, maybe the body dies with it. Silence settled around the room. Then Kira stepped forward. Then let's go hunting. By nightfall, the strike team was assembled. 5 of the strongest left in the resistance. Miles. Emery. Kira. A demolitions expert named Jace. And Dana, a quiet sniper who hadn't missed a shot in weeks. They moved through a tunnel that hadn't been used in months, one that led into the storm drains beneath the east side of town. Damp, narrow, and pitch black. Above ground, the sky rumbled with distant thunder. A storm was building. Perfect cover for ghosts. Jace laid the charges behind them. Once we're out, this tunnel collapses. No turning back. Miles gave a nod. We end this tonight. They emerged in an abandoned maintenance shed behind the post office. The air was thick with static. Lightning laced the clouds overhead, casting brief flashes across the empty streets. Empty, until it wasn't. Figures marched in formation. Not in a rush. Not charging. Marching. With discipline. The cloaked leader walked at the center. They had only minutes before being spotted. Dana, take the high ground, Miles ordered. She vanished without a sound, climbing a fire escape with practiced ease. The rest slipped behind a rusting barricade, breath shallow. The leader stopped in the middle of the intersection. It turned, slowly, as if it knew they were watching. Then it removed its hood. They expected horror. Rot. A face twisted by death. But instead, it was human. A man. Pale, but not undead. His eyes were vibrant, intelligent. Cold. He raised both hands. The infected dropped to one knee. And then, he spoke. Not a growl. Not a hiss. Words. You've come to kill me. Miles froze. He's talking. Of course I'm talking, the man said, voice amplified by some kind of vocal tech embedded at his neck. I was one of you once. Until I realized resistance was futile. Kira's voice was barely above a whisper. What is he? A collaborator, Emery said bitterly. The man smiled. Call me what you want. I call myself the future. We are evolving. You are not. You fight to delay the inevitable. Miles stood, rifle raised. Then delay we will. Dana's shot rang out first, clean, direct. But the man moved like lightning. The bullet tore through his cloak but missed his skull. Chaos exploded in seconds. The kneeling infected sprang forward, snarling. Jace lobbed a flash grenade. Kira and Emery opened fire. Dana shot again from above, dropping 2, then 3 attackers. Miles sprinted forward, barreling through the chaos toward the leader. They met at the center of the storm. The man moved like he had seen every strike before it happened. He dodged Miles' swing, countered with a punch to the gut, and tried to draw a concealed blade. Miles tackled him, both crashing through the glass of a storefront. They wrestled in the dark, hands grappling for dominance. I don't fear death, the man whispered. You should, Miles growled. He slammed the detonator from Jace's pack against the man's chest and pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. The man smiled. I reprogrammed your signals. A shockwave blasted them both apart as a rogue grenade nearby detonated. Miles slammed into a wall, bleeding from the head, vision swimming. The man vanished into the smoke. Moments later, Emery dragged Miles back into the alley. Kira covered them as they retreated. They didn't win. But they survived. And now, they knew. The enemy had a face. Rain slicked the city in a sheen of blood and ash as the team limped back to the shelter through the ruined east corridor. The explosives they'd planted had triggered halfway, enough to bury the tunnel but not enough to keep the undead from clawing at its edges. Miles' head throbbed from the impact with the storefront wall. His vision swam as Emery helped him down the final ladder into the command level. But he refused to show weakness. They needed leadership. Now more than ever. Inside, the mood had shifted. Gone was the defiance from before the failed strike. Now there was doubt, tight voices, darting glances, whispered questions. The fight with the speaking infected man, now known only as the Cloak, had shaken more than bones. It had fractured morale. Miles sat heavily on the edge of the comms table as Kira secured the doors. We got close. But he was ready for us. He knew, Emery said, wiping blood from her temple. That wasn't luck. He was waiting. Dana stepped in from the side corridor. Because someone told him. We've got a rat. The room fell silent. No one wanted to say it, but everyone was thinking it. One of them had been feeding information to the enemy. Jace was the first to speak up. We've got protocols. No one knows full strike plans but us. And yet, Dana replied coldly, he reprogrammed our detonator frequencies. He moved his units into position before we surfaced. Someone told him everything. Kira crossed her arms. Then we flushed them out. One by one. Emery nodded. No radios. No outbound comms. Double-check security logs. We monitor everyone. Closely. Miles listened, head pounding, watching the people around him, the tired, the wounded, the scared. And somewhere among them, a traitor. We hold the line, he said quietly. But if we're compromised from within, this place falls without a single shot fired. The next few days turned into a slow-burn paranoia. Doors were kept locked. Teams only moved in pairs. Every hallway had an armed guard. The old library shelter, once a place of whispers and plans, had become a prison of suspicion. Kira ran surveillance checks on the shelter's internal cameras, eyes red and burning from lack of sleep. We've got movement anomalies. Someone's been accessing the archive wing at night. Archive wing sealed, Miles replied. Not anymore. They pulled footage. Grainy, low-resolution video of a hooded figure slipping into the hallway past 0200 hours. Too fast to clearly identify. But their gait, familiar. Emery narrowed her eyes. That looks like Davis. No, Dana said from the corner. Davis's leg is still recovering. That limp's not his. Jace leaned in. You think it's Sergeant Vega? She's barely spoken since her teen was wiped out. Or she's hiding guilt. Emery shut the terminal. Enough. We can't interrogate ghosts. We confront them. That night, Emery, Miles, and Kira cornered Sergeant Vega in the storeroom. She didn't run. Just stood there, staring at them with hollow eyes, hands raised in surrender. I didn't tell him anything. You accessed the archives, Kira said sharply. We saw you. I was trying to understand who he was, Vega replied. Before all of this. His face, it was familiar. Miles stepped forward. You knew him? Vega hesitated. Before the fall, he was part of a bioresearch unit based in Nevada. Military black site. I was stationed nearby. He used to give lectures to military scientists. His name was Elijah Voss. That name hit Miles like a hammer. Voss? The same one who disappeared during the early outbreaks? Yes, Vega said. He went missing days before the first major horde attacks. Some said he had defected. And now he leads them, Emery said darkly. He built them, Vega whispered. I think he was behind the mutation virus. A failed weapon, that didn't fail at all. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kira broke it first. Why didn't you tell us this before? Because I thought I was wrong. That I was going insane, Vega said, eyes full of guilt. But when I saw him on the footage. Dana's voice crackled over comms. Breached door. Western subtunnel. They all stiffened. Vega drew her weapon without hesitation. I'll prove where I stand. The western subtunnel was already crawling with movement by the time they arrived. Small, fast infected, scouts, moved like spiders along the walls, testing defenses. They didn't charge. They just waited, claws clicking against concrete. Watching. From the darkness, a voice called out through a hacked speaker in the wall. You're fracturing. I don't need to kill you. You'll do it to yourselves. Voss. Miles aimed his rifle at the source of the voice. We've faced worse, he growled. No, Voss replied, tone quiet and cold. You haven't. A deep grinding noise echoed through the ground. It was the sound of something massive approaching. Vega's breath caught. He's bringing in the Juggernaut class. Emery paled. What the hell is that? Miles answered her with dread in his voice. Something we don't have the firepower to stop. The rumble underfoot felt like thunder with no sky. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, rattling down like dry rain across the flickering lights of the west corridor. Miles stood frozen at the tunnel entrance, heart thumping as the low, grinding growl grew louder, closer. Back, he shouted. Everyone fall back to the inner perimeter. The team scattered, feet pounding against concrete as the shelter's westernmost doors trembled. From the darkness, something massive slammed into the bulkhead. Once. Twice. Crack. Steel groaned and folded like tin. The gate bent inward, torn from its hinges as something enormous forced its way inside. Sparks sprayed from the ceiling. Dust and steam exploded into the hall. Then it stepped into view. Not just a zombie. A titan. 8 feet tall, layered in bone-plated armor and pulsing with necrotic muscle. Its mouth was sewn shut, yet a low growl emanated from its chest like a living furnace. Both arms ended in massive clawed fists wrapped in steel bracing, makeshift weapons grown into its body. A makeshift mechanical harness dug into its spine, twitching with nerve-reactive control rods. The Juggernaut, Vega said breathlessly, taking a step back. That's what Voss created to break bunkers like ours. Kira raised her rifle. Can it be killed? Only if you're stupid, fast, or both, Jace muttered. Emery pulled out a thermal grenade. Or lucky. The Juggernaut charged without warning. It moved faster than it should have, too fast for its size, smashing through crates and fortifications like they were paper. Miles barely rolled aside before its claw shredded a barricade behind him. Split and draw it out, he shouted. Get it away from the comms core. The team scattered again. Dana dropped from the rafters and unleashed a rain of shots into its exposed flank, some bullets embedded, others deflected with sparks. The creature roared, not in pain, but fury. Jace lobbed a trip mine, its blinking red light vanishing under the beast's feet. Boom! Flames tore upward, hurling the creature back a few feet. Smoke billowed, but when it cleared, the Juggernaut rose again. Limbs scorched, body torn, but still moving. That should have taken off a leg, Jace whispered. That's not natural. No, it's engineered, Vega replied. Modified tissue. Bone grafts. It's not a zombie. It's a weapon. Miles ducked behind a support beam and keyed the emergency intercom. Section Delta, evacuate now. We can't stop it head-on. The response came back crackly. Already pulling out. Medical evacs en route. He turned to Emery. We hit it with everything. Focus fire. Aim for the back, it's got something wired into its spine. Emery, Kira, and Vega converged, flanking the monster as Dana kept pressure from above. The Juggernaut thundered through the corridor again, barreling toward Miles. He ran, led it down a narrower hall, drawing it toward the trap. He ducked past a steel-framed doorway. The beast followed. And triggered the sensor Jace had set 5 minutes earlier. 3 shaped charges. Close range. Perfectly aligned. Boom. 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 The explosion sent shockwaves down the hallway, lighting up the entire section with searing white heat. Debris rained down. The walls trembled. When the smoke cleared, the Juggernaut was on the ground. Still breathing, but motionless. Everyone rushed in, weapons raised. Spine. Vega shouted. Emery slammed a crowbar down on the exposed neural rig at the back of the creature's neck. Sparks flew. The tech crackled and died. The creature gave one last shudder, then went still. Silence. For the first time in hours, real silence. They stood there panting, staring down at the monster that could have wiped out the last of them. Then Miles knelt beside its head and looked at the remnants of its eyes, glassy, mutated, but once human. He turned to Vega. "How many more of these does Voss have?" She shook her head slowly. "Too many." That night, the shelter was quieter than ever. No attacks. No scratching at the doors. No voices from hacked speakers. Voss had made his point. He could send monsters. He could break walls. And next time, he might not just be testing them. Miles stood in the war room, tracing a red line across the newest map Emery had drawn. "We need to strike back before he sends more." Kira walked in, her voice low. "Then we find his factory." Vega nodded. "I know where to start looking. Northern edge of Nevada. There were rumors of a biolab buried in the mountains. That's where Voss disappeared." Miles looked to the others. One last push. One chance to end the nightmare. He didn't say it out loud, but they all felt it. This next fight wouldn't be survival. It would be war. The convoy rolled out before dawn, engines muffled with scrap rag dampeners, headlights blacked out, tires crunching softly across the cracked asphalt of what used to be Highway 95. Miles sat at the front of the lead truck, eyes scanning the horizon as Vega fed coordinates into a salvaged GPS unit. The route would take them north through what was once the Nevada desert, but now, it was something else entirely. A dead land. A place where screams echoed across canyons and the sun rarely pierced the ashen sky. Behind them, 4 vehicles followed, 2 armored, 1 medical, and 1 carrying the EMP warhead they'd salvaged months ago. If the rumors were true, and Voss's lab still existed, the warhead might be the only way to destroy it. "We have 5 hours before daylight," Kira said from the rear cab, rifle in hand. "Once the sun rises, the heat triggers migration patterns. We'll be swarmed by noon." Miles nodded. "Then we don't stop." By the second hour, signs of the old world began to fade. Rusted road signs bent under wind pressure. Cars abandoned mid-escape, some still with skeletal passengers buckled in. Ash swept across the pavement like snowdrifts. And then the sky turned a darker gray. "We're near the blast zone," Vega said quietly, eyes narrowing. Miles peered out. In the distance stood what looked like the carcass of an old airbase, dome hangars collapsed, radar dishes torn like paper. No movement. No sound. Was this Voss's lab? Emery asked from the passenger side. "No," Vega replied. "Just a decoy. He wanted people to think it ended here." She pointed toward the mountains in the distance, jagged and sharp against the sickly light. The real sight's inside those peaks. Carved into the rock. Deep. Hidden. A chill passed through Miles as the trucks moved forward. He could feel it now, the quiet. The stillness. Too quiet. Then came the first sign of resistance. They crested a ridge and came upon a field of bodies. Not undead. Human. Dozens of them. Survivors, fighters, people like them. Lying motionless on the side of the road, faces twisted in confusion and terror. "What happened here?" Dana murmured. Kira crouched beside one. "No bite marks. No gunshot wounds." Emery checked another. "Eyes are scorched. Nerve trauma. Looks like an energy pulse." "EMP?" Chase asked from behind. Vega shook her head. "Something worse. Directed neural disruption." Voss was experimenting with frequency-based attacks, waves that could fry a human mind from inside. "Is that what he plans to do with the rest of us?" Miles asked. "If we give him the chance," Vega replied. Hours later, the convoy reached a narrow mountain pass leading into the canyons. The truck slowed, tires grinding against gravel. "This is it," Vega said, pointing to a slope. "We go on foot." The lab's sealed behind a natural rock wall. It opens with a signal code only Voss and his AI systems know. "So how do we get in?" Emery asked. Vega held up a small box, an encrypted military signal booster. We mimic his code. Long enough to trigger a manual override. Kira narrowed her eyes. You sure about this? No, Vega admitted. But I'm sure we won't get another shot. They disembarked, moving cautiously into the narrow path. Cliffs loomed on both sides. The silence returned, thicker than before. No birds. No wind. Just the crunch of boots on stone. Then the signal booster crackled. BZZZT. Unauthorized signal detected. Emery's face went pale. That wasn't us. It's him, Miles whispered. He knows we're here. The canyon trembled. From the shadows emerged dozens of infected, silent, fast, controlled. But these weren't shambling monsters. They moved with purpose, flanking from both sides. Tactical. They were commanded. Weapons up. Miles barked. Hold formation. The fight was chaos. Kira and Jace provided sniper cover from the ridge, dropping targets before they got too close. Dana and Emery formed a defense wall with steel shields and flame charges. The creatures kept coming, coordinated and relentless. A screech pierced the air, high and sharp, like a modem scream. Miles stumbled. His ears bled. Then, as fast as it began, it stopped. The infected collapsed mid-charge, dead, frozen. What the... Emery started. Vega looked at the booster, her face white. That wasn't us. That was a shutdown order. Miles stared toward the rock wall ahead. It had opened. A tunnel waited in the darkness. Lit faintly. Welcoming. Voss wants us to come in, he said grimly. Then we finish it, Kira growled, stepping forward. Miles drew his rifle. We end this. Together. The entrance swallowed them. Stone and steel. A tunnel carved not by nature but by obsession. The resistance fighters moved in a tight formation, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting thin beams through the dark. Each step echoed like a warning. Miles was the first to speak, voice low. If he shut down the horde to let us in, it's not a trap. It's a message. He wants us here, Vega agreed. He's been watching, maybe even studying us. We've become part of his experiment. The corridor widened into a chamber, its walls lined with decaying monitors and humming servers that ran despite years of abandonment. Screens flickered to life as they entered, showing grainy black and white footage. Vega, escaping a facility. Dana, rigging explosives. Jace, losing his brother in New Chicago. Miles, holding the line at Burnsville. All of it, recorded. All of it, cataloged. This isn't just a lab, Kira whispered. It's a control room. Then came the voice. Smooth. Synthetic. Chilling. Welcome. You have come far. Too far to turn back. Everyone froze. Miles aimed his rifle toward a speaker overhead. Voss? Voss is evolved, the voice said. He shed his name, his limits. What you see before you is what remains, a system. A solution. A future. Vega stepped forward. You're a coward hiding behind machines. You engineered monsters. You turned the infected into weapons. Humanity made monsters long before I refined them. The screens changed. They now showed a vast underground facility, columns of infected in cryo-storage, surgical tables soaked in black ichor, machines implanting chips into brains. Then, something worse. Footage of failed hybrids. Half-living, half-mechanical beings twitching, screaming, restrained as they were upgraded. Vega's voice cracked. You were supposed to stop the virus. You created this instead? Cure or extinction. Both required control. I chose survival. My version of it. Dana smashed one of the monitors with her rifle butt. Miles turned. We move. Now. Vega, how do we destroy this place? She pulled out a tablet, connected to the EMP warhead waiting above. Signal boosters synced. We activate the core detonation from here. 5-minute timer. Then the whole place burns. You'll destroy knowledge, the voice warned. Data humanity will never recover. Progress. Kira raised her weapon to the ceiling. You call this progress? You turned people into drones. No. I freed them from chaos. From failure. From emotion. Suddenly, the floor shook. From behind the glass walls lining the chamber, metal doors hissed open. Out stepped the final prototypes. Humanoid shapes, tall, smooth, precise. Pale synthetic skin over gleaming internal frames. Eyes glowing faint blue. No rot. No blood. Just engineered death. Alpha units, Vega whispered. Sentient biomechs. The endgame. Miles took a step back. Everyone, defensive circle. No holding back. The alphas moved silently. Blindingly fast. The first launched at Dana, who barely parried with her blade, sparks flying as metal clashed. Emery unloaded 2 full mags into another, which staggered, then kept advancing, undeterred. Jace rigged a tripwire explosive and dove aside as an alpha stepped into its blast radius. It lost an arm, but kept fighting. These things don't feel pain. Kira shouted. They don't feel anything. Vega replied. A screeching alert sounded. Intrusion detected. Self-defense protocol engaged. Lasers dropped from the ceiling. Auto turrets whirred to life. The chamber turned into a death maze. We can't hold this position. Miles roared. Fall back to the core access. They fought their way through narrow halls, ducking gunfire and robotic limbs. Dana was grazed by a turret blast but kept moving. Jace threw smoke bombs, covering their retreat. Finally, they reached the biocore. A glowing central column of green-blue energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Beneath it, a glass floor showing the cavern below, rows of preserved infected in stasis, waiting. Place the beacon! Miles shouted. Vega dropped the EMP trigger and activated the sequence. 5 minutes. No going back. But just as they turned to flee, one last alpha unit descended from above. Larger than the others. Sleeker. And worse, it spoke. Miles Carter. Subject Profile 003. Predicted leader. It lunged. Miles met it head-on. Their weapons clashed. He fired point-blank, nothing. It countered with brutal precision, knocking him across the room. The team opened fire. Every shot counted. The Alpha's systems sparked, flared, and finally shut down. It collapsed. Miles rose slowly, limping, blood trailing down his temple. We done? He asked. Vega glanced at the countdown. 2 minutes and 34 seconds. Not yet. They sprinted back through the tunnels. The ground shook harder now. Systems collapsing. Lights flickering. Outside, dawn was just breaking as they emerged from the mountain. Jace was the last to leap into the truck bed as the engines roared to life. Behind them, the mountain lit up. A silent flash. Then the rumble. The mountain imploded, sending a column of smoke and debris into the sky. The lab was gone. The hybrids, the AI, the core, all turned to dust. Miles sat in the back of the truck, bruised, exhausted, but alive. Kira leaned beside him, silent. Then Dana asked, "Did we win?" No one answered. Not yet. Because something always survives. Let me know when you're ready for Part 10, The Last Light, 795 words, The Resistance faces what remains and what's next in a world forever changed. The sky burned orange as the sun clawed its way over the distant hills. The mountain where the lab once stood was gone, reduced to rubble, dust rising like a funeral pyre for the sins buried beneath it. The convoy rolled on in silence, their faces gaunt, clothes torn, skin bruised, but their eyes, still alive. Miles sat in the back of the truck, staring out the rear window. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Not while uncertainty loomed in every breath. Kira leaned against the wall beside him, holding her side where a cracked rib throbbed. "We stopped it," she said. "Didn't we?" Miles didn't look at her. "We stopped a part of it. Voss's machine, the alpha units, the lab, it's all gone. But the virus, the infected, they're still out there." Jace piped in from the driver's seat. "Without the AI directing them, maybe they'll revert. Go back to being mindless. Maybe it gives us a chance." "That's what scares me," Emery muttered. "We've seen what they were without leadership. That was already bad enough." Behind them, Dana was quiet, gazing at a small locket in her hand. A photo of her sister inside. One of the many they couldn't save. The convoy eventually reached the old Redstone outpost, a rusted fortress of concrete and steel, nestled in the ruins of what used to be a mining town. Survivors watched from makeshift towers, rifles ready until they recognized the approaching vehicles. The gates opened slowly. People rushed out, cheering, embracing, crying. "You made it back," someone shouted. Miles stepped down from the lead truck, blood drying on his jaw, the weight of command heavier than ever. "Where's Commander Rivas?" he asked. A woman with silver-streaked hair approached. Her expression was unreadable. "She's gone," the woman said. "Died in the night. Infection finally took over." Miles closed his eyes. Another name added to the growing list. "You're in command now," she added quietly. He didn't answer. Later, as fires crackled and rations were passed around, Vega gathered the remaining leaders around a table inside the command trailer. Maps were spread out. Red zones marked where infected roamed freely. Black zones where no communication ever returned. And tiny green dots, safe zones. Barely holding on. The EMP surge disrupted more than just the lab, she began. "We picked up pulses across other major infected hubs. Some of them went dark." "Meaning?" Jace asked. "Meaning the hive link was real. The infected were evolving, connected. Controlled by a central system. Once we shut it down, many of them stopped." "Not all," Kira said grimly. "No," Vega agreed. "But enough to give us time." Miles studied the map. "So we strike. Hard and fast. While they're weakened." "That's assuming we have the numbers left to do it," Emery said. "That's assuming we don't stop," Dana added. "If we rest too long, they'll adapt again." The room went quiet. Then Vega tapped the map. "There's an old broadcast tower just north of here. We use it. We send a signal. Not just to warn people, but to call them. Bring every surviving cell together. We form a real resistance. A nation," Jace murmured. "From ashes. A future," Vega corrected. By dawn, the survivors had transformed Redstone into a war post. Barricades reinforced, weapons cleaned, routes plotted. Miles climbed the broadcast tower himself, flanked by Kira and Vega. The wind howled, cold and sharp. Below them, the camp flickered with new life. He held the transmitter mic tightly in his hand. "Are you sure this works?" "Battery's full. Range is about 70 miles, Vega replied. "Let's make it count," Kira added. Miles clicked the mic on. He took a deep breath. "This is Captain Miles Carter of the Dead America Resistance. If you're hearing this, you're not alone. We've destroyed one of the sources of the infection. We've proven they can be stopped. We're calling on anyone, anywhere, who's still fighting, still breathing, still human, to join us." He paused, then added, "We're building something here. Not just a shelter, but a future. We need fighters. Medics. Engineers. Farmers. Dreamers. If you can hear this, we're alive. And we're waiting." He released the mic. The signal echoed into the void. And for the first time in a long while, hope followed it. That night, a boy no older than 15, dirty, thin, scared, approached the redstone gates carrying a handmade flag of surrender. The guards raised their weapons. "Stop," Miles ordered. "Let him in." Behind the boy came a caravan of worn-out survivors. Dozens. Then another group arrived the next day. Then more. And each brought something: stories, tools, medicine, knowledge. One even brought a recording, picked up from an old satellite. It was the Resistance's message, bouncing through the ruins of America. On the wall overlooking Redstone, Miles stood with Kira as the sun set. Fires glowed below. Children laughed. The air, for once, was still. "You think we'll win?" she asked. Miles watched the horizon. "We already are." The end. But in Dead America, a new chapter is always waiting to be written. Let me know if you'd like a trailer script, character visuals, episode summaries, or anything else to help promote your YouTube series.